Hey everybody, welcome to Personal Mastery Training. And as the name says, it's personal and it's about mastery. It's about your mastery, mastering the three-pound mass between your ears. Because once you can do that, outside is irrelevant. No matter what goes on outside, it's irrelevant if you can master the inner game. So this is what this is about. I do 2 episodes. First one I do is a strategy episode, and that's me nudging you, giving you a topic of conversation for you to think about, dissect. I throw it at you, and my goal is that you take it and run with it. And I want you to expand. My goal is that you journal, you dive deeper, at least give it some thought. Because I don't think you should get through life. I think you get from life. I don't think you should get through challenges. I think you should get from it. And once you do, those challenges will be the strength you use for the next one. So second interview I do is interview with people who I have seen who are mastering their own personal game, and they're in the middle of it. No one ever gets to the end of a game. There's no end to get to, by the way. It's all about mastering each moment. And these people are dedicated to mastering their moments. And I've watched them. And so I want to pick their brain and I want to share it with you on this podcast. So today it's called a masterclass. And today I have someone I met, gotta be maybe over a year. Seems like longer, but over a year. We're in a group called Trainer Revenue Multiplier. And it's about helping trainers to multiply their revenue, as the name says, 10K. And Isaac has been an interesting person, and he uses the word prolific and professor, and online, you'll see him online, and again, to explain all that later, but he's a student of the game, and he's been through struggles. I know that for sure. He's been through wars, literally, and his own personal war, and he's out there every day crushing his game and working on himself. And that's what I want everybody to kind of realize, is that, I'll repeat this again, I said in a podcast earlier, the person at the top of the mountain didn't fall up there accidentally. They have to climb, and that's what he's doing. So Isaac, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alvin. That was an awesome intro, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be talking here. You are someone that I look up to in the industry, and someone that is a voice of wisdom for a lot of people, and so it's definitely an honor to be on here.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you saying that. That's a big honor for me to hear that, and because you're someone that I look at as, I respect as a student of the game, someone who's prolific professor. You are constantly working on yourself. So tell us, what I want to do is start at the present moment, and then I want to go backwards. I want to start at where are you now. Tell me about your company. Tell me about your current achievements, where you are now, what you're working on.
Yeah. So you mentioned Trainer Revenue Multiplier. You've mentioned Prolific. So to dive into that, Prolific PT is the training company that I own. I run the Prolific Muscle and Prolific Health portions of that, which is more focused on contest prep, as well as functional, like integrative health for like hormone optimization, metabolism optimization, etc. But going into TRM, the Trainer Revenue Multiplier, for them, I am one of the mentors and coaches for a program called Kickstart, where we can help people who are just trying to establish their training business, like for the first time, and helping them get their first, 8 to 12 clients and maintain it and build those systems, so then they can go into that next portion of TRM and thrive. And create a thriving business where we can really start to scale and impact there. So that's what I do for TRM. And then I also host my own podcast called the Prolific Muscle Podcast, which is also on Spotify, on iTunes, or anywhere you get your podcasts. But that is my current thing. I'm also getting ready to get married in October. And Congrats. So that's a great thing. And I think you can attest to the blessing that a healthy and good marriage is, both on your professional life, personal life, spiritual life, all of it. So that of course is a blessing. I'm a dad to a beautiful little girl.
I love it.
And have 3 dogs. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. And the word prolific keeps on, it's the theme for you in most of your products that you offer. How did that name inspire you? Where did that come from?
Yeah. So my company used to be called Team Miller Strong. And I mainly focused on contest prep, and that was pretty much it. And as I got into developing within TRM as a student of the business world, I realized that what I wanted to do in the game I was playing was, as you talked about, the game never ends, right? Well, I
Mm-hmm.
realized I'm playing an infinite game.
Mm-hmm.
And that infinite game is to change this industry, because for some reason the fitness industry has become really unhealthy. And that was the opposite of what it was birthed to be, was something that created an abundance of health.
Yeah.
And so I realized that Team Miller Strong and me doing it on my own wasn't going to cut it, because I'm going to die before I change this industry. But the legacy that I leave could potentially make that change.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I needed to create something different, something that was apart from just me. And one of my business partners, his name is Stan. He's the co-host for the Prolific Muscle podcast. He had kind of started coining that, the Prolific Strength Co. And we had kind of gone into business together on a training company. And so with that, I just really fell in love with that word. It means, to be in a position where you can create abundance, where you can be prolific with your results. And I feel like everybody, no matter where they are in their journey, deserves prolific results. They deserve to reap the rewards of the hard work that they put in. But with that, I also believe that those results come from a sound knowledge base and good teaching. And so for me, being the prolific professor per se, though I'm not an actual professor for a college, I do enjoy teaching all of the things that I've put hours and hours and hours of work into studying, so that other people could then go out and make prolific results.
I love it. I love it. And so one of the things that I'm getting from you, Isaac, is, and this is something that our audience can take away. It's almost as if you created the attraction. So the name created the foundation, the structure for you to start building things around. And now you're moving towards this mission of prolific in all areas of what the products you produce. And so for me, the takeaway, and I'd love, my audience to journal on this a little bit, is if you're currently right now stuck at finding something to drive you, to wake you up, or to motivation, is create it in advance. Prolific. You pick your own word. That you can kind of create the foundation, the structure, almost like the structure of a house, and then you put the siding on it, you put the rest of it on, and you start to drive it. So that's what I get from you. Prolific. You just created this whole thing to believe in, that you're doing this crusade.
Yeah, I mean, in TRM, one of the things we talk about, though we brush over it, and I love in the breakout rooms to go a little bit deeper, is the neural anchors. And what's something that's a neural anchor that when times get hard, when things get monotonous, when even life can get boring, what is it that you think about that makes you continue to do what it is that you do? It's your neural anchor. And one of my neural anchors was prolific, like to make prolific results and help other people see prolific results and to teach that. And so that was a neural anchor that became the brand. And so for me, it was a seamless kind of thing, because every time I think of my business, it's a neural anchor to keep moving, because I'm still on that mission. The mission's not done yet.
Mm-hmm.
And with the past experience that I've had, like, it's that relentless pursuit to accomplish the mission, no matter how hard it is. You figure out a way to make it work. You figure out a way to push through. And so it was a great word and a great neural anchor to use as the brand, because if I can instill that kind of feeling behind it within the other people in the company, then that there's no way that brand can't take root. If it's a neural anchor now for multiple people, not just me, and those multiple people wake up and think of Prolific as a company that just is meant to do something more, then that's how like movements start.
Yeah.
And that comes down to leadership, that comes down to understanding the mission, but ultimately it's like that neural anchor was so important.
Yeah, that's awesome. So number one takeaway, everyone, grab your journals, stop the podcast right now, and think about that. If you're currently in a position where you're wondering, what am I going to do with my, what I know I should be doing something, I'm not motivated, or I don't have the idea yet, and it's not clear. Why don't you create a word that you can wrap things around and move towards it? Maybe one of your values, or one of the things that motivate you and move you. And then you can, from there, the neural anchor, you build and you start to really let that word move you. Sometimes you can have the vision and the vision moves you, but if you don't have that vision, it creates something that draws you and pulls you, and eventually it just takes you on that run, because that's what's happening with Isaac now. This prolific is taking him over, and he created a word, now the word's creating him. So awesome. So Isaac, let's go back to your beginnings. I want to go back to, because you mentioned you slipped in a little word there that I caught, and the battle. And so tell us about your past before you are where you are now, and because I know you've been through some stuff. So let us
Yeah,
know.
I mean, I feel like every successful person is born out of adversity. You
Mm-hmm.
don't create a level of discipline and adherence without pushing yourself through something that might be a little dark or a little hard to understand at the time. And so for me, I didn't have a hard life. I can't say like I didn't come from a rich family by any means, but my parents worked really hard. Both parents would work multiple jobs, like we were low middle class, but we still had a roof over our heads. Um my family, my parents were foster parents, so I had one blood brother with my parents, but we had a house full of just kids in and out who were coming from abusive homes or homeless. And so it was always that level of understanding the needs out in the world. And that being said, just understanding the value of life from losing a lot of loved ones and losing a lot of family members young. Because as a kid, you grow up with all these brothers and sisters and they become really, really close. But sadly, they still will end up leaving and going back to a home and a lifestyle that was not conducive. So I did lose a lot of loved ones pretty young. So I understood the value of life, and the value of death, in that essence. So that right there just kind of drove me to want to do something with what I have, this vessel that God gave me, um, to just try and make a change, try and do something different. I didn't know what that looked like, but I knew that there was something more for me. Uh, Fast forward to college and I get into bodybuilding and powerlifting. Was lucky enough to compete at Worlds for powerlifting, broke some world records, and that just kind of set my trajectory in the fitness space. Though again, I still didn't know what that looked like, or what my calling was. I ended up joining and enlisting into the Marine Corps and did that whole journey. But through that, found myself just in a lot of leadership positions in which I was again somehow always drawn back to the fitness industry. Whether that was teaching martial arts and hand-to-hand combat, whether that was leading Marines and PT and physical training in the mornings, even to helping the diets and nutrition plans, because I was the only one who was a nutrition certified kind of person in the unit. So they would send all the Marines who were on the verge of being processed out for being too overweight, and I would just end up helping them through that. And so I found myself actually managing 2 gyms in California while being in active duty Marine Corps, and just found this kind of love and passion for the fitness space and for helping people. And so then fast forward again, after a couple deployments and after a couple workups and everything like that, it's the end of my time in the Marine Corps, and COVID hits. And so me going from working in a gym and having a steady paycheck in the Marine Corps, plus just that lifestyle that you build up after years of doing something like that and that job, I found the transition really difficult. And I
Yeah.
found myself just completely um, isolated
Mhm.
and not knowing what I'm doing with my life.
Mhm.
And all the gyms were closed down. I was living in LA at the time. Gyms were closed down. Businesses were closed down. My business was kaput. I was, struggling paycheck to paycheck off of GI Bill to go to school and disability pay.
Mhm.
And so I realized like this sucks, being
Mhm.
being completely at the bottom of the barrel.
Mhm.
It's something that I would never, I told myself I would never be in that position because I grew up with not a lot.
Mhm.
But that being said, I also knew that there was still a mission to do. Whether the economy was shut down, whether businesses were shut down, whether gyms were shut down, there was still a mission to do. And that's when I started to realize that like this is just another hill to get over. This is just another challenge to climb. But fitness is my space. I knew what I needed to do. And then fast forward again, I ended up finding TRM. And TRM helped me establish my online company and actually do it the right way.
Yeah.
And completely kind of transform my life from there.
So I want to talk to this idea you brought it up real quick about this inner drive, because a lot of people don't know what they could be teenagers to 60 years old. They did a job to make a living, but they don't want to do something else, but they just don't know what it is. And you talked about this inner, well, I'm going to convert it to where you said there's an inner drive. And it's the same thing I had where I saw a Nike quote that said, all I knew is I didn't want to be average. I didn't know what I wanted, but all I knew is I didn't want to be average. And for me, average was doing less than my best. And so, what do you say to people who have, the interview you knew you didn't know what you wanted at, when you're in the foster home and when you're pre getting out of high school or whatever it might be, and but you just had this something burning in you to drawn to fitness. Even in the army, you were still coming back to fitness. What do you say to someone who doesn't know, but they have this inner drive? Just talk to that and this idea that following, trusting the process and having faith. Now you're looking back, you're going, I really didn't know, but I just had faith and I trusted the process and kept one foot in front of the other. And here you are today, prolific. You're on this path to this, you're getting more clarity. So what do you say to someone who's just they're circling around it, but they just don't know, and but you trusted the process. Talk to that.
Well, I mean, I'll give kind of two answers to this. One, my personal answer is um, I grew up in a very Christian household. My father is a pastor, and so I grew up in a very Christian household to where it was always like, go to God for everything, pray and pray for discernment and wisdom. And through my journey through life, I kind of not just put that away, but ran from that. And I was like, no, I'm going to do things on my own because that's a bunch of hoopla. I don't believe in it. Um, and I got put on my ass a lot. And I had
Mm,
to, I was humbled a lot.
yeah.
Um, and I was trying to be my own God and pioneer my own way through. But it was obscuring my view of what my
Mm-hmm.
mission was.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me personally, it was like whenever I actually dove into the word and dove into my studies and really asked God for discernment, he started to point me and open doors in the right direction. And that allowed me to go. For someone who's not like a religious person, but still has that same inkling to want to do something bigger than themselves or to do something that has a purpose to it. It's like if you have that feeling, it's there for a reason. And you don't know what tomorrow holds, but I guarantee if you talk to people who have been in your shoes who are now successful and they had that same feeling, they're going to tell you, all of them are going to tell you that feeling doesn't get smaller. It only grows. It grows and grows and grows. And the more you fight it, the more it's going to grow. And so if you just embrace that feeling of like there's something there that I need to, that strand that you just want to pull and see where it leads, do it. Get curious. Like you should be curious about these little things that go on in your mind, that go on in your head. You should start to unpack and unweave where it's coming from. because if you can figure out where that is coming from, then you can figure out where you want to go with it. For me, it was being, a lower income kid. I was always made fun of in school for having, the clothes from Goodwill and free lunches at school because my family didn't make enough money. Like, I was made fun of for that. I was also kind of out of shape, covered in acne. I was that kid. And I didn't like that. So for me, when I unpacked, I realized this journey isn't just getting me to where I'll never be that kid again, but it's helping all those other people who have been that kid figure out how they can free themselves from that, past that they felt stuck in. And though there was a ton of life events that make being a pimply little kid seem completely obsolete, I realized that was still a big driving force of why I do what I do. And so for me to say, if you have that thing, just start unpacking, get curious, and figure out why. Why are you having these curiosities? And once you figure out why, you can push forward.
Now, I want you to talk. So, from curiosity, and I'm a total believer in what you just said, big time. I want you then to talk to me about, from curiosity, next word I want you, next C word is courage. So now that how much courage does it take now to follow your dream, to follow, because yes, you're curious, you found something, there's this thing, there's this, but am I doing the right thing? I'm questioning myself. Oh, is it the right thing? And the courage to execute on that curiosity after you've found what you're looking for. Talk to me about, because you can relate to this. You signed up for the Army, and here you are, you're in the Marine Corps, and you are going to battle and so on and so on. How much harder is it to follow your true passion than it is to go to war? Is there, what do you say about that? Because you can train, go to war, but for some reason, going after what drives you seems to be, takes more courage. Do you agree with that?
Yes. I'll give a tangible example here. Your brain is designed to subconsciously detect threats first. Like, that's what it does. And what it does is a lot of those threats have been preconditioned already through childhood. So we don't even realize that we're blocking or creating or constructing different thoughts to protect ourselves based off childhood things. But a good example of this would be when I was in training, one of my trainings in the Marine Corps, we were practicing underwater rescues. I went down to do a rescue, but I completely just fudged it up. Like, I had kind of panicked. I'm not confident in the water already. And this is a crazy swimming card that we were doing. I was down trying to do the rescue, and we're in our full gear. The guy I was rescuing, his helmet smashed into my nose. And so my nose broke underwater. And of course, I immediately, like, that's, and so I don't remember what happened. I was just told kind of what happened. I essentially, I died. They brought me back. So then I don't touch the water for a while. I don't touch the water for a while. Fast forward to about a year and a half later, and I'm doing a course for one of my belts for martial arts in the Marine Corps. And we're in full gear, and we're in the culminating event, and the instructor's like, all right, time to swim. We're in full gear, boots, camo pants, like the full thing. And we start getting in the ocean to swim. It's cold. I'm tired because we just went like an hour and a half just doing random stuff through the hills. And now we're on the beach and we're swimming. All those memories rush back. And granted, when we got into the water, we had just finished some sparring, so adrenaline's rushing. You're not thinking about it. So we're a good half mile into our swim, and suddenly it all comes up. Oh shit, I can't do this. Like, this is not good. And I start to panic. And I remember the instructor looks at me, goes, "What's wrong? Like, what are you doing?" Because I'm like we're a half mile into the swim, and I start to panic. And he looked at me, and and pardon my French, but he's like, "Quit being a pussy. What happened happened. You're here now. Now survive."
Mm-hmm.
And it snapped to me real quick. I'm like, I'm not some kid in the water.
Mm-hmm.
This is survival. This
Mm-hmm.
is expected of me, and I need to accomplish the mission. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly I was able to swim. And we did 3 miles of swimming, came back up onto the shore, and then did
Mm-hmm.
more sparring in which I had to, go through and fight all the instructors after doing a 3 mile swim and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like I realized I had no ability to change where I was in that present moment,
Mm-hmm.
but I had the ability to change who I was in that present moment and focus on what was left of the mission, because I knew we still had 2.5 miles to swim. And then I
Mm-hmm.
had to fight all of these instructors when I got to shore.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
now it didn't just go to, I need to survive and do that any way possible, because that's the
Yeah.
first way you want to drown. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
drown, start panicking about surviving.
Right.
That I was like,
Yeah.
okay, how can I conserve my energy to finish this mission? And suddenly I became way more efficient. And so with with us being scared to push through, oftentimes it's because we've hit some crazy adversity in our past, and our brain is catching on to that, and it's blocking us from moving forward. And that fear is a protecting mechanism for something that happened long ago to a different version of ourselves that isn't the present version. So what you need to do is realize the present version of myself can handle this,
Mm-hmm.
because I am not the person that my brain is thinking for.
Yeah.
And then you just have to think about, how can I now accomplish this mission?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how my brain perceives it. I know it might be different than a normal, person, but
Mm-hmm.
it really helps me to put it into almost like a battle plan, like almost so where I can build SOPs for my own
Mm-hmm.
goals.
Right.
Because that's how I can get past the fear. If I can create that tangible, plan to overcome the mission, then
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason to be scared of it.
Mm-hmm. So let me now dissect that a little bit, what I heard. One, stuff happens to everybody in their life. Tragic things. Sometimes, when you said things happen to you, sometimes it didn't even happen. We make things up in our reality that it did happen this way, and so on and so on. Because we delete, distort, and generalize a lot of information. There's a lot of information coming in our lives, and we sometimes just focus on a couple of things. So, first of all, what I got from Isaac's amazing story, that alone right there is your key story, is because that's life. He said a lot of things that apply to our lives. The mental barrier was what came back for him in the water. So all of a sudden, he's half mile out. This flash of this memory that's not even happening right now comes back to him in the middle of the water. And it becomes real for him. He got paralyzed, went into paralysis almost from the thought of it, and something had to shock him and, pattern interrupt his entire pattern. And just that statement that your leader made you snap out of it and then get back to, okay, and he said, start panicking about surviving. And how many of us do that we started a passion business or whatever it might be, or on our road to passion, we meet upon some struggles, pandemic, you name it, whatever, debt, finance, and we panic about surviving. And that's what made you become stuck in the water. Someone had to shake you, break your pattern, and get you out of it. All of a sudden, you remembered you had all the resources to actually make it out of this. And you went back. Once you snapped out of the fear sitting right in front of you, because the fear became real right in front of you. The boogeyman was right there sitting in front of you, made you paralyzed in that water. Something snapped you out of it, and you realized, damn it, I got all the resources I need. What am I doing? And how many of us get stuck in the middle of our crisis and realize that we do have all the resources that we need. We just have to activate them. And that's what you did. I love this word you keep using, the mission. I call it, one of my books I want to write in the future is called Unfinished Business. You had an unfinished mission you have to complete. And a lot of us in our lives have unfinished missions that we started out at and we don't complete them. When we get stuck in the panic, and the fear and the paralysis. And we're right in the middle of our own water, our half mile out from our own water, and we have to go back. And you had more battles to fight, but in that moment you had to grab your resources and activate them to get you out of there. There was no going back. You're in the middle of it right now. You got to do it. So I find that is your key story there. And for everybody listening, something did happen to Isaac. He did get hit in the nose and he did pass out. He died, came back. That's real. But it happened in his past. And it snuck up on him when something triggered it and opened up that gateway again. And here it comes. But something broke his pattern. He went back to his resources and pulled them out. And your training, I love that. Your training. There's one thing I say is we don't rise to the occasion. We fall to a level of preparation. And
Yes.
That's what you did. So I love it. I love that.
I live by those words, literally. I'm alive because of those words.
Preparation.
And I even saw something today, though I don't like the example that they were using it for, but it was about adversity training. And though I won't go into details of how they were using it, I do think it is really important. Like, for example, in the military, like, our adversity training would be running through scenarios that are very realistic scenarios. I remember there's times where we were going through mock towns and we would literally have role players there who, like, say, for example, if we're getting ready to do a mission or have teams ready to do a mission in Africa or something. I remember we had a crap ton of role players that were all African and Somali role players that we filled a mock village with. And then we went in and did war games, and so that the people could get used to seeing and conversing and doing things in town that looks like where they would be. And so whenever you can't speak the language, when you can't, understand the signs, when you're trying to do something, then suddenly shit hits the fan. It's like now this all falls apart, and you have to figure out how to make it work. So if you can practice that to the point where when things fall apart, you have the resources and the abilities and to make the contingencies needed to see success, that plays off into real life with us. Like, if there's downtimes in our business, a lot of us tend to freak out, but no, this is a great opportunity for you to focus on your systems, improve the other things, the back end stuff to your business. That's not, what you typically would be focusing on when times are super high. There's things that you can do in your life when it seems like, proverbial shit hit the fan and you don't know what to do. It's like, no, that's the point where you're just being a victim of your circumstances. You have to step back. You have to look at the whole picture and realize where you can fit that mold, and where you can fit, yourself into those circumstances. Because right now you're just trying to jam yourself in the wrong spot.
Love it. 2 questions to bring us around here. One is, how, looking back, so low middle class, foster home, kid that wasn't that popular in school, all the things, it's tough enough as a teenager, but yet all of it going against you, wasn't in the shape you're in, didn't have the look, the aesthetics, all that kind of thing. Few failures that you've gone through in your life. Even in being the Army, I'm sure, dying was a sign of, not man enough or whatever it might be, right? Not tough enough, who knows? All these stories, how have you let your past currently drive your present and your future? How are you using all of those things to drive your current crusade, your mission?
That's a really good question. And honestly, being completely honest, this is something that, I still struggle with. And we talk about anxiety, depression, we talk about transitioning, out of the military. My transition is still relatively recent. I got out in 2019.
Right.
So it's still relatively recent. And there was a time, what I didn't bring up is, before I joined the Marine Corps, I was homeless. Like I didn't want to, I was in college, didn't have enough money for it. I was couch surfing, living in my Kia Forte, and I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go back home because I knew all the kids who did, you know, they
Mhm.
either just started working on the farm or became mechanics. You know, that's just what
Mhm.
they did for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So I would say the only thing now that I take with me from my past, it has nothing to do with my success. I would say like
Mhm.
the adversities and everything like that, and the mindset and the resilience and the discipline, like that's what I bring over. But in terms
Mhm.
of like, if there's a tangible, you know, memory that I remember that drives me, no, none of it
Mhm.
does. It's just all the
Mhm.
skills that I've been taught, such as
Mhm.
discipline is a skill.
Mhm.
And discipline creates vigilance. Vigilance
Mhm.
creates success. You know, like that's those types of things are the things that I bring over. But in terms of, you know, memories and thoughts of myself, that's a whole different person. You know, I had to, and I still am trying to do this um identity shift per se. Because at times it's really hard to pull yourself out of that military kind of environment. Even though
Mhm.
you're not in it, it's still kind of in you. And
Mhm.
there's good things to that. There's really good things to that, but there's really negative things to that as well.
Mhm.
So for me, it was like, I'm not that person. I am, you know, the owner of Prolific PT. I am
Mhm.
a good mentor and coach to many other trainers. Like it was a complete identity shift. And I had to, and I'm trying to let go of a lot of that past stuff while still keeping the skills that I've been taught. So I
Mhm.
hope that makes sense.
Yeah,
Uh, and that's just my
it does.
personal answer. I was one
Yeah.
who was driven by those thoughts like, oh, that person said I could never do it, so I need to prove them wrong. That was me
Mhm.
for such a long time.
Mhm.
And I realized that was actually just making me worse.
Yeah.
And it was making me addicted to the negative side of the journey, which was that I just need to prove everyone wrong and laugh in their face when I do. And it
Mhm.
was keeping me forever enjoying any of the success I was seeing. I was seeing a lot
Mhm.
of success and I was ruining it because I was just trying to be this person that was proving everyone else wrong. And when I stepped away from that and started stepping into, I'm doing this because of my future self and my future family and my future, you
Mhm.
know, love and life, and
Mhm.
uh, it's a different person. Suddenly, the success actually felt like success. It didn't feel like
Mhm.
I was still just trying to gain that.
Yep.
But you talk a lot about, and something I really respect you for is talking about, you know, if your whole mission is to get the cars and the girls and the money, then by all means go for it. If that's what it takes, you
Mhm.
know, to do it, and then
Mhm.
you get there and
Yeah.
see maybe that's not what it
Let it
is you
go.
wanted, that's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. For
Mhm.
me, that was it. But I realized before, well, I mean, even as I was getting there, I was like, this isn't it,
Empty.
because
Yeah.
it's not even just empty. It was like I wasn't seeing success as success. I was seeing it as like, this isn't good enough. I need more. I need more,
Mhm.
I need more. And suddenly, whenever I was able to actually see it as like, I'm actually gaining success right now, and it feels like it. It was a whole different feeling. It was a whole different motivation, you know, and now I can keep seeing success and I can keep growing it and compounding it, but I can actually enjoy that feeling. You know, I'm not
Mhm.
keeping myself in this state of misery for the sake of just doing that because I
Mhm.
felt like it's needed. And
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us as entrepreneurs and as people get addicted to the negative feelings because
Mhm.
feel like that drives us more. But I would challenge us to, I would challenge anyone to be like, step into the more positive side. And if you
Mhm.
fully embrace it, it oftentimes is way more of a motivation than
Mhm.
fooling yourself with the negative thoughts.
Mhm. I love it. And so here's what I would, from my outside perspective and listening, here's what I actually think the power, superpower that you receive from your past. Discipline, yes, that's there. Empathy is a big one because you had this ability to be around so many different people coming in that foster home that you lost this ability to judge others, to lack of judgment. So you can empathize with a lot of people and know their journey, not judge them. because you've been there. And you know, insight. It gave you so much insight. You got curious because of the struggle you went through. That leads to curiosity. Struggle leads to curiosity. That's how change happens, right? And then caring, you know, a caring for humanity. So I think you got a lot from your past, man. And that's what makes you Isaac, you know, the prolific student of life. And so my last question to you is this. You mentioned this word a lot, mission. What is your current mission right now? And what is the unfinished mission that you are currently working on? I mean, we'll never be finished. You'll find a new mountain to climb or a new mission. But what is your current mission right now? And what do you see at the end of it?
I would say, and great question. And thank you for the list of things that I've gained. It's really, you talk about insight. It is really insightful to have an outside perspective on the things that we've gained, the strengths that we've gained through our past. Because sometimes, as you know, we don't see it when we're in it.
We don't.
Especially as you're a half mile in and suddenly all those things come up. And it's like, you start to see all the things that you've gained that are negative, all the excuses that your life has given you, all the reasons of doubt, the reasons to run, the reasons to pack up, to call it quit, to say you're not good enough.
Freeze.
And the fact if you flip that coin over, you have just as much, if not more, positives in your corner from that life.
You did.
And before we get into the question, I would like to just say, I love comics. I love comic books. I grew up with the superheroes and supervillains, and my arm is literally covered with Marvel and DC comics. It's inked on my skin. So I always love the montage scenes where they're training to actually be the superhero.
Right.
And too many times we take that montage and think it's just a 2-minute clip and suddenly they're superheroes. In reality, that was like years and years of just getting their butt kicked and tortured and beaten and abused for years to become the superhero.
That's right.
And so for us to look back at all the negative stuff, realize that was your montage, or maybe you're still in your montage, but don't think it's just a 2-minute thing. You need to be shaped and molded and ironed into that hero, and it takes adversity. And so when you have adversity hit, think about that. This is just your moment. You're being tested. You're being meddled into the hero that you want to be, and embrace the adversity, because that's what creates the
diamond.
The diamond. Yeah. It's what forces the coal, to change.
That's
so
right.
Now to going back into the question you had, my mission, I would say my professional
current mission,
my current professional mission is to help every fitness journey see prolific results. And that's an insane, daunting task to take, because there's an infinite number of fitness journeys out there. But two, my second mission is to create a place, whether that's physical or metaphorical, a place where first responders and veterans and like crisis type jobs, occupations, people who are ready to move on from that, people who are either ready to retire or realize that lifestyle is not, and they're ready for transition, to give them a place where they can be a part of a team, but learn advanced training and nutrition protocols and business protocols, to where they can now go out and thrive in the fitness space and be, an industry leading coach without feeling lost, without feeling like they're just left in the dust by the government and by the military, and because it's not a fun feeling to be there and not knowing what you're doing. And so to give that space to them and to create a movement where we can see amazing coaches come from those spaces, that is another huge mission for me.
I love it. That's a beautiful one, actually, and because there's a lot of need, even probably a bigger need than the first one you had, where you said there's a ton of fitness people, but there's actually a big need for as you said, people in especially that serve the country to come out and not have the resources because they've done one thing for so many years now. It may not even be exactly applicable straight away. They have to find a way to take all those resources they learned, the intangible ones, especially discipline, and turn that into something they can live a life after they transition from the rigorous rudimentary in the Army, right, and the Navy and the Corps and so on. So awesome. I love it. I love that. That's amazing. So those are two amazing missions that you unfinished business that you have to complete, and they get you up in the morning. So that's awesome.
Thank
It's a
you.
win-win.
I'm blessed, and I have to say there was a point where I hated waking up, but now I don't think I've woken up to my alarm clock
Beautiful.
in months. And I can say that right there is when you know you're doing something right.
Yeah, the mission
You
is
wake
clear.
up before your alarm clock
Mhm.
and you're already just like, I'm excited. I'm ready to
Yeah.
go. I write down every day, I will make an impact today.
Yeah.
Like I will make an impact today. Even if
Yeah.
it's on one life, I'm going to
Yeah.
make an impact today. And if you're find yourself in that position,
Mhm.
you're doing something right.
100%, my man. That's powerful. That's powerful. Underneath, and we'll end here, underneath one of the hashtags I started to put underneath most of it isn't in my pattern yet, but it's going to be in my pattern, is just one. I'll put hashtag just one, because all we want to change is just one. I know everyone's caught up on 100,000 followers, 200 million followers, but we just need to change just one. That's all. And you've done your karma for the day. And you know what? The information you shared in this podcast today, my goal that it changes more than just one. So it's been an amazing journey. I loved it. I love all of it. Neural anchors. There's so many, coming from, again, the background that you've had, the struggles, the Army, the everything, all the adventure that went on in that old Army journey, the Marine Corps journey. Those things, the panic in the water and the half mile out. There's your book right there, Half Mile Out. So anyways, brother, it's great knowing you, man, and I appreciate you coming on here. Before we go though, brother, how can people get more of you, more prolific exposure? Where do they go?
Well, again, thank you for having me on here. It's an
Absolutely.
honor and a pleasure. And again, you're someone that I look up to, and
Appreciate you.
I'm honored to call you a friend and a colleague,
Yes, sir.
a mentor, and that whole,
Amen.
your work until your idols become your rivals. I promise you to change that. Work until your idols become your partners. Work
Yes,
until
sir.
your idols
Amen.
become the people that you actually converse with and hang out with,
I
because
love it.
that will elevate you to a whole new space. And this is
New.
just proof of it, because I would have never have dreamed of being sitting here with the great Alvin Brown doing this podcast. So
Appreciate
thank
man.
you. To find me, Instagram, The Prolific Professor, and TikTok, same thing, The Prolific Professor, and the podcast, Prolific Muscle Podcast. So anywhere your podcasts are at. And yeah, if you're interested and want to get a hold of me, you can just do so through Instagram. And if you're interested in coaching at all, just again, Instagram, click that link and you'll have that. But
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. I love it. Everyone, that is the prolific one. Check him out. He's just beginning, really and truly, in this releasing his wisdom. One thing you'll know once you follow him is there's levels to his game, and he's just scratching the surface. And in how many times we have on Instagram, those short little moments he gives you impactful information. So you're making a difference, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate
you.
All
right. Awesome. All right, everybody. That is it. That is an amazing masterclass. If you like what you heard, if you know anyone who could use this information, someone might be one. My mentor said to me, one idea well executed will change your life forever. And I want you to remember that. So listen to this, subscribe, share. Someone might need this right now. Someone who's struggling, someone who's half mile out and panicking. They might need to hear this. So I love that. Isaac, thanks again. Thanks, everybody. You know why I do this. I want you to be relentless about your pursuit for mastery and for personal greatness. Until next time, everybody, peace and love.